What goes into a name? Just had 12 names read to us. And when we hear those 12 names, Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, probably we think of a history immediately connected to it. Peter, the first pope, the first disciple, the one closest to Jesus. We hear James, maybe you think Santiago, and everything that's connected with Santiago and mission in Spain. Thomas, the doubter, we had him the other week. Matthew, and here has the title, the tax collector. When these names, we hear these names of these apostles, it's not a blank name. Sometimes when we hear in the Old Testament, you hear like Nebuchadnezzar and some of the other biblical names, well, we kind of draw a blank. They're hard to pronounce, and we really don't know much about them. But certain names, we have the whole history. It's behind it. Many times when we get together and we talk about our own history, the history of the Agrupacion, our own history in the past, we have to bring up names. The name, or assigning a name, or bringing to memory the name of a person, is what separates the gospel from legend and makes it history. Because the gospel is told through the history of real people, not characters, not mythical figures, but real people. The same way we tell our history. When we explain our history, we remember the names, probably those who've passed on before us, those who maybe not a lot of us remember or may even met. But that name and that memory is what separates our stories from myth and legend and makes it history, a living history. And so in the gospel and even throughout the Bible, there's a repetition of names. It's very important to bring up names. Because again, with those 12, we have 12 histories. 12 ways of spreading the gospel. And the interesting thing is when we look at these names and we actually look behind in some of the history, well, they're saints, but they weren't born that way. Peter's the one who denies Jesus. Peter's the one who butts heads with Paul. James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John wanted first place. Their mom even gets involved and says to Jesus, can't you have them at your right and your left? Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, well, Thomas the doubter, Matthew the tax collector, a person of ill repute because of his work. James, the son of Alphaeus. Alphaeus, I believe, was a very simple man, a worker. Thaddeus, Simon the Cananean. Cananean wasn't the best of backgrounds to have in Israel. It meant you were probably son of a pagan. And Judas Iscariot, well, we know about that one too. We have a story behind each name. We have a story to remember. What is the story that is attached to our name when it comes to also spreading that gospel and bringing that proclamation to come to the fore? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. What will be the history of our names if this were to be written? Jesus tells these 12 to cast out the evil spirits, drive them out, and cure every disease and illness. Well, perhaps in today's society, we need this more than ever. And it also falls unto the apostles and the disciples that are gathered right here in Yaku to also cast out those evil spirits. And how do we do that? Well, obviously with the help of God, but also through a strong formation. Right now, I'm preparing the lessons for the seminary in the history of the church, and I'm talking about the 16th century, the 1500s. The Renaissance is going on. It's a moment of incredible wealth, not only in art, material wealth, but also in learning. And in the midst of all that learning and that wealth, the Protestant Reformation came out. And that's what I'm actually dealing with right now in the class when I'm preparing. Going over the Protestant Reformation, and right there, names. I keep on listing names to present to the seminarians so they identify what was going on name by name. One of the things that I noticed reviewing that history again for I don't know how many times I've looked at it was that lack of preparation that allowed the Protestant Reformation to happen. It was a moment when people had questions, but everybody was giving answers. Very few gave the right answers. Everyone had something to say, but, well, nobody was able to check what they were saying. The successors of the apostles are known as the bishops, and today still the bishops are considered those successors of the apostles. And one of the difficulties in that moment of the Reformation was they weren't quite living up to that. Many people were saying things, the reformers were making their declarations, rewriting the catechism, even redoing the whole Mass, and they stayed silent. Those names don't get repeated because there was no history to attach to them. And so I see more than ever our mission, como agrupados, como consagrados, es ayudar a sacar esos espíritus impuros ahora en el mundo. Espíritus impuros que están en nuestra sociedad, que invaden la familia, invaden nuestras casas. Es lo que a veces nos invade a nosotros a través del pecado. Y siempre digo, cada paso que podemos dar adelante, cada vez que podemos cast back the evil spirit, eso es una victoria para Cristo. Pero cuando no lo hacemos, cuando nos quedamos callados con los brazos cruzados o preferimos mirar al otro lado, pues una victoria para el mal espíritu. No hay nadie neutral en esta lucha. Tenemos que seguir esas palabras del Señor, ese reto mismo del Señor, es sacar esos espíritus impuros, seguir esa tradición, ese trabajo de los 12 que tenemos ahí, para también nosotros un día poder ser contados entre esos discípulos y esos apóstoles que sirvieron a Dios, que sirvieron a Cristo en este mundo y al cual la historia de la iglesia está basada. En el nombre del Padre, del Hijo y del Espíritu Santo.